Hey, welcome back to the Diary Room Blaze. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me again. I am doing mediocre, so not much really to report, frankly, but I'm just kind of here. It's finals week, so dealing with that while dealing with the org, so I mean, I guess that's a thing, but like, that's like a whole other thing that, whatever, you know?
Yes. Okay. So, so how do you feel like this cycle has been treating you? Another sweep week.
Oh my god, can you tell them to stop? Like, it's getting embarrassing. Why is there so
Period.
many? I've never seen an org have so many. I mean, I guess it's not in a row anymore, but still, 4 out of 5. It's just weird that it's happened 4 times. I don't know. Anyways, I have been all right this cycle. I'll obviously get into specifics with like different sorts of questions, but I feel like it's been a very like it's another like lax cycle to some extent because it's expected nominees, expected
Mhm.
outcomes. So it's nothing that I think is too surprising for anyone, spectators or house guests. So I don't think there's a lot to like say in terms of like how I feel about the cycle because it's another mediocre cycle, so to speak.
Okay. So Ryan was HOH nominates Gal and Crow, so that's all expected for you.
Yes, it is. I think even like last cycle, I was like, the easy noms are going to be Crow and Val because at this point, as I've been talking like in a couple DRs, it's very like half the house was like AFK, it were not very active, and half the house was. So Crow and Val were like the last two that were easily deemed as
Mhm.
inactive. So not at all surprising to see either of them up here because of that. So, I mean, nothing to really say.
So MJ walks at the top of the cycle. How do you feel like that affected your game plans?
It, I mean, it frankly didn't, in terms of like how she was playing into cycles, because I think a lot of people were expecting her to want to go anyways, so they were probably going to go for her as a result. So it didn't affect me in the way of like her being in the game or not, which it sounds mean, but the way I mean it is like it's just like strategically doesn't mean like a whole lot. I do hope that MJ is doing okay and everything. I kind of it's a little off topic to some extent, but a little on topic. But I've kind of been like a little, a little bummed from just a house guest perspective about the pre-jury, so to speak. I've been a little vocal about that in my DR and in my one-ones because I feel like it's not anyone's fault because some people had like circumstances, like with MJ there. But to some extent, when there's a lot of people like myself who want to play the game, or at least me who wants to play the game, it's kind of just disheartening to see people that are giving up, I guess. Like there was Zareen, and as much as I love her, she wasn't around after she got nominated, which kind of felt like a soft quit in a way. Then there was Brandy, Livy, I had heard was gonna quit, and then MJ did quit. So it was just like a lot of things in a row. So it wasn't like anybody's fault, more than just circumstance that made the pre-jury feel kind of weird. And the exception to that was Malik, but it still was just weird that it happened 4 out of the 5 times there. And then I don't know, with that whole thing, that's kind of like that's the only way it really affected me was kind of just like my view on the pre-jury. If I had to say something that did affect me, it gave me a little less time to figure things out. Like something I think the biggest impact of that is it doesn't give it time to figure out like who's the physical threats of the season. Because that was a time that a lot of people could have won HOH or POV and been safe doing so. So like with Aiden, he wanted to win when MJ was there because it was an easy nominee set and he was going to set him up. So we got to see a little bit of like his actual comp prowess. So with those kind of situations, it's like, well, we didn't get to see the cycle fully play out and to see more competitions and both from like a house guest perspective of missing out on seeing that information, but also I can imagine to some extent on a production and like a spectator value, like it does miss a whole cycle. So it is sad to see that happen. But all that rambling aside, I hope that MJ's all right and everything's going on after that.
Period. Speaking of looking out for comp threats, We've done 10 competitions across 5 cycles, and 4 people have attained all of those wins. So who do
Mhm.
you feel like you're looking at right now as far as like, this is the person I'm most worried about in competitions?
So specifically in competitions, because you can obviously be worried about a lot of people for different reasons. For competitions, I think you kind of have to look at what the competitions were. Because, for instance, we can take Jordan. I do think Jordan is somewhat of a competition beast because the competitions he had won in cycle two were actually like pretty impactful. Like they required skill. But the competition with the gifts was more like a crapshoot, so you can't really count that against him. That was just like random draw. Um, so it's like just looking at what the competitions are, I'd say that probably the people that I look to the most are Shinx and Jordan. I mean, Ryan did have a sweep week here, but I don't think those competitions were necessarily showing anything about his competition skills. Because when I look at comp threats, I think about people who can do things fast. Because that's what most competitions are going to rely on. So, like, that's probability wise what's going to cause you to win a competition. So, in that sense, Jordan and Shinx take the cake there. So, the people that worry me the most are both of them for that reason.
Okay, interesting perspective. We get into the, I forgot what the proper title we had for it was. Oh, Close Quarters Veto. Based off the iconic Dots and Boxes game. And so I saw you, live reacting with Mira and stuff. I had a lot of thoughts about the comp. Um, but kind of how was the comp for you?
Okay, well, first off, setting the scene, I'm out here. First off, I take like my lunch because I'm thinking it's gonna be longer, and then of course the competition gets moved, so I'm like, shit. So fast forward, and I'm on my 15, coming into the competition, half late, having to catch up on what the game even is, and then slowly watching this play out and seeing the way that things were going, because first off, going into this, my perspective was if Sammy wins and takes down a nominee, someone has to go up that's big. So that is the worst case scenario here. I even thought that when as soon as Sammy got picked, I was like, oh, do not let Sammy win. So imagine my horror when Crow starts throwing to Sammy. I mean, the whole thing was just a mess. I mean, I think Shinx did what was right to throw it to Ryan, and he had the reason to do that. I mean, that's what I would say I would like to see. I think that's what my best outcome would have been. Is that the best thing he should have done there? Maybe, maybe not. But either way, he's never been good at throwing. He's totally terrible at that, and he can read back on that. Um, but I start seeing Shinx like starting to give boxes and stuff, and I'm like, okay, so this is how it's going. But then Crow picks up on it, and then he starts doing it with Sammy. So then I'm like, this is my best and worst outcome. So I am like, okay, I need to start talking with somebody because I'm freaking out and I'm not sure about the rules. So I'm like, I don't think I can talk to Shinx. I don't think I can talk to like anybody in the competition. So first person I go to is obviously Mira because I'm closest with her and I can talk about the competition freely and not worry about that. So I'm just sitting there analyzing every single move. Like, oh my god, Shinx just missed a 3 box. Like, I think it was like somewhat halfway through that I saw like there was a 3 box that was given to Sammy by Crow that Shinx totally could have taken. And I was so pissed at him for not doing that because that was such an easy one. Like, I was just, it was freaky how close Sammy got, and I was scared. I mean, when it got down to it, it was literally just like one last row, and if Aiden hadn't pulled the move he had, Sammy was going to win. But Aiden had pulled the perfect move to make sure that Val got a lot, yes, but it trapped her into having to give Shanks the last move, which he could give to Ryan. So I was just like, hallelujah, thank God. Because I was so scared of what was going to happen that entire time. And like, I could just read the conversation with Mira. Like, I was freaking out. I was even making bad moves in my like 1-1. I was like, oh shit, wait, that's not a good move. Like, there was just so much going on, so much like anxiety for me because it was my best and worst outcome. So I was like, oh, just so much to say there.
Please. So, following the competition, not everyone was too happy. You guys had another little house blow up. What was your perspective on that?
Another is the key word there. I don't know what's been in the water recently. Something's been going on. I mean, I guess it makes sense. The competition was totally crazy. But just seeing that was so funny. And I was like, thank God it's finally not me. Because I had been through an entire cycle of torment and constant call outs that it was just like, ugh, here we go again. But it was finally about somebody else. And I was again at work. So I'm having to sit here running to the bathroom like 15 times to pretend like I have to use it just to read what is going on because I can't help myself being the drama oriented
Yeah.
person I am. I'm like, I need to see what's going on. I don't care what Target has to say. I'm not stalking the basketballs. I'm going
Please.
straight to the back room. So I'm like trying to watch it go down. And I mean, like, in my analysis, I guess, I get why Crow was upset, Crow and Val, because it is kind of like a crapshoot outcome. It does kind of suck on their part. But they can be upset about the outcome, but it's like hate the game, not the player kind of vibes. Like, they didn't play it right, and Shinx played it in a way that got them the win ultimately. Like, you can't hate him for strategizing that, but you can obviously hate the game and the outcome that came out from it. So just like, okay. But how it like specifically impacted me, I was like, okay, Ryan and Shinx are getting put together here as like a lapdog. And this is kind of off org stuff, but in my last season when I played with Shinx, there was a very similar situation where he got pinned as a lapdog for somebody. And I know from that experience, he felt like he had to get that person out because of it. So I was like, oh, we're just repeating this now. So that's definitely a good thing to keep in my arsenal now, because now I know that I can continue to get that going. But you know me, I'm going to talk about every player at some point. But I think that Ryan is one of the bigger threats in the game that I want to get out sooner rather than later. So this is just another piece of ammunition for me to use. But even further from that, it kind of cemented like a safety next cycle because with Mira's HOH block power, she's going to use that on Sammy. And if we get rid of either Val or Crow, frankly, either one is probably going to put the duo of Ryan and Shanks because they think they're working together. So I was like, perfect. It gives me a very safe final nine now. So I'm just sitting pretty and watching that happen. I'm perfectly fine with that all going down either way. So just the entire thing was like, kind of love to see. Not terrible for me.
Sounds good. So Ryan doesn't use the veto, so noms remain the same. So between Val and Crow, kind of how are you thinking on the votes?
I mean, okay, so I did some thinking while I was at work stocking those basketballs, as we said. But it really didn't hit me until I was stocking the Barbies that I thought that
Yeah.
like different options there. I guess that was my epiphany moment. But there was my thought here was kind of with Crow, I have a very possible jury vote because he really, really likes me, apparently. So I was like, keeping him in the jury would be a good move for me because it brings me an option for somebody that may vote for me just out of likability. And I think the early jurors who don't get to see the game are the people that have to base it off of likability. So no offense to dear Crow, but Crow is probably going to be an early juror. So I'm just like, this is kind of an opportunity for that. Um, so that was like my one of my bigger weigh-ins. But the other thing that ended up coming up is Ryan really wanted Val gone. And for me, I do want Ryan gone sooner rather than later, so I don't want to give him any alert of what I'm thinking, if that's possible. I want to kind of like show loyalty. I don't want to give him an alert. I don't want to give him any craziness. So I don't want to like try and turn on him right now because it'll only alert him for later. So just going with what he wants right now is setting him up to be blindsided later, hopefully. But either way, I'm just running with the vibes there because Valor Crow, it really is like in some ways the same side of like a different coin, I think someone said. I don't really know the phrase. So really my biggest considerations were Ryan and also that jury vote that I was thinking of. So that was my biggest weigh-ins with the eviction.
Right, fair enough. And looking into the next cycle, is HOH something that you are planning to win?
No. I'm lying to everyone saying I will, but hell no. I think
Please.
I think for me, I'm kind of trying to look at this in the long game here. I think most people do this very similar thing, where whoever survives here and Sammy are the easy nominees that people can put up, and that might be what they do. But ultimately, I don't think I'm in a position of danger where I have to win HOH first off, which is the first thing I look at. I don't think that's something I have to worry about. But second off, I don't want to give people any incentive to see me as a further target. I want to let other people continually rack up things and get like reasons to be targeted later down the line. So, for example, Aiden. Aiden and I are playing very similar games, in my opinion, where we're very social and we talk to a lot of people. I don't know like what he's fully talked about game wise with people, but I think he's like an equal level of social with me, probably a little more actually. So if he wins HOH, it kind of exposes him a little bit because it makes him choose people, which can be a good and bad thing, but it also shows that he's capable in competitions even more, which gives him a reason to be targeted over me because he's more capable in competitions. So can he be taken out later over someone like me? And there's other little things that kind of play into that. But my basic gist here is to say like I don't want to win competitions because when it gets down to like competition cycles, one of the things people look at is who can win competitions, and I don't want to show that I can unless it's necessary. So just trying to keep that threat level down, plan for the longer game when things start getting haywire because they're probably about to, considering that most of the inactives, air quotes, are mostly gone. So that's mainly my plan is just to kind of let things run and let people win HOH because the outcome doesn't really affect me either way.
All right, sounds good. Um, so if you yourself don't want HOH, would there be any ideal outcomes for you?
Um, Sorry, can you repeat? Like, who won HOH?
Like, kind of going into the race since you're not trying to win yourself,
Mhm.
like, who would you be rooting for to win?
Oh, okay. So if I were to root for somebody to win, I think the easiest options are to say Aiden, Jordan, and Mira, because I'm absolutely safe with them. I don't think Shanks is a bad option either, but frankly, if I'm thinking, I don't know, I want Crow and Sammy to go up and one of them to go. I don't think it frankly matters either, because they're honestly a little dangerous in their own ways. Crow is good at competitions, and Sammy, I think, is the easiest goat to bring to the end right now. So that could cause her to like run really far, and I don't want that. So I guess for me, it's really either goes. So a Crow Sammy situation, which I think Aiden does, probably Shinx does, Mira does, and Jordan does. So any of those four options are good for me. Michael, I just don't really know what he wants to do. I don't know if he wants to make a bigger move. So I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, but I can adapt if needed. And then obviously my worst situation would be Crow, assuming Val gets evicted this week, because that would mean that it takes a bigger shot, probably at Ryan Shanks. I don't think it'd be a bad thing by any means, but it wouldn't be my preferred option. I don't know. I really don't think either are bad because if Crow or Sammy go, they have their reasons there. But if Ryan or Shanks goes, I think they're both threats in their own right. But I guess for me, I want Ryan gone more than Shanks, and people might think Shanks is the bigger target because the competition wins. So I guess in that sense, I don't know. I'm planning to kind of talk a little bit about like everyone and kind of like thinking down the line. But I think Shanks staying around is beneficial for me in some way. So I want him to stay around for a little longer, and it does threaten that if Crow wins. So I guess, yeah, I would stick with those four of Shanks, Aiden, Jordan, and Mira for that reason.
Right, sounds good. And you mentioned you wanted to kind of break down where you are with everyone.
I guess, if you insist, absolutely.
Please.
So, for Aiden, really what I wanted to talk about is like analyzing my place with them in the late game and like kind of where I want them to be at. Aiden is somebody that I think is playing a very similar game to me, so they're going to be kind of hard for me to go against. So I'm planning to help kind of push the idea that Aiden and Jordan are a duo in some way, as I've already done with Michael in a conversation, because it does look very apparent that they are in a duo of sorts. So I think it's going to be very easy for both of them to get nominated at the same time. And because Aiden is somebody that I think has a very similar game with me, it does worry me in the late game if I'll be able to argue against him on certain points. So in some way, I do want him out for that. Looking forward right now, I'm thinking around 5 or something, maybe 6. Either way, it's kind of where I see him at. Crow I've talked about plenty. I think he's just kind of wins too many competitions, and he's kind of an unpredictable factor that I don't want to deal with right now. So I think I would prefer him gone sooner rather than later, either next cycle or the cycle after that, preferably, even if I don't think it's going to happen at the same time. Like, I don't think Crow and Sammy are going to go out next to each other, but I wish they would. Um, Jordan, somebody that's good at competitions. So it's somebody that I guess I would like out sooner than Aiden. So if I had to say, like, I guess Jordan would, I would want out a little sooner than Aiden, depending on how these next cycles go and, like, physical threats manifest and whatnot. But I think I have more trust in Jordan to bring me further because we have different games than I do Aiden. Because I think Aiden is more likely to see that we have similar games and it'd be hard to argue against. So I think it's a little scarier for me for Aiden because he might see that and might not want to bring me super, super far. Um, Michael is somebody that I want to keep cultivating a relationship with because to me, I think Michael is one of my best Final Two scenarios because I think that the lack of what he's done so far because of pre-jury and him being busy with work is going to make an easier argument for me later in the connections that I've set up compared to him. So if I could get in a final two with him, I think it's a safe option and an option that he might consider as well, depending on who else is in the final three. So I'm looking to bring him pretty far if it's possible. So, like, one way I'm trying to avoid him getting targeted, he told me about Aiden and Jordan. Normally, I would run until Aiden and Jordan because I trust in them right now, but I don't want to put that target on Michael right now. So I'm choosing to withhold that for now. If I need to, I'll bring it up. If I don't, I won't. Mira, I don't know how to feel about Mira. I think she's more social. So I think to me, she's in more danger than I am slightly because she puts in so much effort to talk with people. And that could be a point I can bring up later. So I think it's more like when the circumstance gets brought up, because I think both of us might go on the block together. Hopefully she goes out over me. Um, if I can bring her far, she's not very good at competitions, so I guess I could beat her. But that's like really far down the line. I think Mira's somebody that I need to like, feel out a little more. Ryan, I got one gone sooner than later. I don't want to be a newbie cast that lets a winner win again. That'd be really fucking embarrassing. Um, and I just think he has the best middle position right now. But I'm seeing like there's ways to unravel that. People are seeing that Ryan's a little bit more of a threat for many reasons. So I don't think it's the worst thing ever, but I still, even though he doesn't have that threat level because he's not as connected as I may think at first, I still think that he has such a case towards the end that I don't want to bring him very far. So I would like him to go in an earlier cycle, like maybe 7, give or take, somewhere around that zone. I think Sammy I've talked about, so not really much else to say there. She's my biggest liability, I'd say, right now, because Sammy winning HOH means a pawn next to Mira, and that could be me, so I want to avoid that by any means possible. Shinx, I want to get as close as possible with, and I'm hoping people notice it, actually. Because I think if I make myself look like I'm really, really close to Shinx, like I just oopsie doopsie talked about my wee wines experience with him. Oh, I'm talking about trusting him so much. Oops. I think it's a better thing for me to have Shinx be on the block next to me because Shinx is so good at competitions that I think people are gonna want him out in a later game. So if I'm ever on the block next to him, I think I survive. So I would like to get close to him because it gives me somebody to be on the block next to that I think I could survive against. Now, there's always the situation that he could win a competition over me, and I can't control that. But ultimately, if it comes down to it, when it comes down to it, ultimately, I would rather be up against Shanks than probably anybody else because I think things can get iffy. Um, so overall, I want to get really, really close to them, and I'm hoping people notice it to some extent because um, I want them to think that that's, I guess, my ultimate loyalty. I mean, I guess I don't want to like make it super obvious, but if someone has to think something, I prefer they think that than anything else. Um, but best case scenario, nobody ever questions me on it, and I can just be close with everyone anytime. But I think people are a little too smart for that, so just kind of a liability plan there. Um, I think that's everybody. I mean, Val's probably going to cycle, so I'm probably not going to talk about that. But there's still so much game to be played. There's opinions to be changed and everything as things play out, because unfortunately, we dealt with half the game of just getting out in actives. So it wasn't very exciting and it didn't let us make bigger moves. So now it's like I'm facing a lot of bigger players now, which kind of sucks, but I gotta bite the bullet and deal with it. So things will change. It's ultimately down to a lot of competition wins, so I just gotta kind of adapt and roll with things as they will. So that's just general thoughts until those have changed. But I think that's everybody.
All right. Well, thank you, Blaze. Always informative.
I have to try. Texting's too hard, and this makes things so much easier.
Please. I'm glad you enjoy doing them.
I
Uh,
do.